Hello, welcome to season 2, episode 3 of Soul Conversations with Jenna and
Patty. Hi guys, I just really wanted to do that. I have a little tiny microphone. I don't know.
Patty was very excited about it, so
I am, and it's not even working because it's not even connected. So we're just gonna leave it over there.
It looks good though. Definitely bring it in for a few appearances.
Should I bring it in again? Okay, I'm just gonna do this. We're gonna I just lit some sage just to kind of cleanse and purify sort of this sacred container, this sacred conversation. Welcome again.
Yes, welcome. Yeah, definitely keep the little microphone. I like the aesthetics.
Okay. No, oh my God. No, that's not good. Okay. Anyway, all right. Enough comedy for now. This is not a comedy show. That wasn't even really that funny.
It was pretty funny. Well, happy Friday, everyone. I feel like we always record on Fridays and we never even bring up the fact that it's Friday. Friday is such a celebratory day.
It's Goddess Venus Day.
Yes, that too.
Right? It's Goddess of love, Goddess of beauty, Goddess of abundance, Goddess of romance, Goddess of the pink rose.
I'm kind of like fitting the part. I'm wearing my red dress.
You're wearing your red. Yes, it's sensual. Yep. But today's conversation is not very sensual.
No.
Today's conversation is a continuation of what we talked about last episode, which is episode 2, which is called Dark and Light. And tonight we're going to be talking about anchoring in. And we had a little bit of conversation of how we wanted to kind of prepare for tonight's conversation. But we decided to just kind of talk about what our individual definitions of anchoring in is, and how we both kind of manifest that, and what we do as far as the practices that we've developed and created to anchor in. But as with every soul conversation, we start with our anchoring in. Let's do this. Okay. So I invite you to close your eyes, place your hand on your heart space. Take a few deep cleansing breaths in. Focusing on the breath in the heart space. Allowing your breath to expand the chest area. Focusing on your inhale, focusing on your exhale. Allowing every breath to be an intentional connection to your heart. Breathing in more air into your heart space and exhaling everything that does not serve, support, and or belong to you. Grounding in our energies into the space, into this moment. We call on all of our angels, our guides, our spirit team, our soul family, our light family to surround us, to protect this container, allowing this conversation to flow as the divine would have it. Allow us to be a conduit and a channel for divine wisdom, divine messages, divine love. May those souls that are meant to hear this message receive this message with an open heart and open mind. And may anyone that comes across our channel and our episodes, may they receive something, maybe they receive a transmission, an activation, or a seed planted any which way that they're meant to receive. Thank you for this space that we get to have these beautiful conversations. Thank you for our friendship. Thank you for our soul connection. A few more deep breaths. coming back into the body, coming back into this space, coming in back into this present moment. We are here now. I now declare this space sealed with love. And we are ready to have this conversation.
Thank you.
I'm ready to have this conversation.
I'm ready. I'm not even going to hide it, y'all. I'm having the worst cramps right now, but we're just going to work through it. So bear with me.
Yes, whoever's watching right now, please send our Jenna some love, some healing energies. She is powering through this conversation because soul needs something. She's got a message for you.
Yes, but I will send love to my womb, to my yoni. I'll take it all.
Yes. Whisper it to the water that you're drinking.
Alrighty. Anchoring into the light. I'm excited about this conversation.
Yeah. I gotta tell you, when we talked about having this conversation and you called me the other day, you're like, wait, so how are we having this conversation? I was like, good question. And I think it actually allows for both of us to just come back into presence of what we want to say and like really be intentional with our message, because it really allows us to create space to ponder it a little bit more. Oh, that word pondering. That's a big word. That's a big word for me. Ponder. Yeah. So when we got off the phone, I was like, start writing some down. Pondering. It's like that emoji with the glasses, like,
It is.
Anyway. But I actually appreciated that you asked me that yesterday, because I would have come here absolutely expressing what soul wants to say and heart, but at the same time, I'm actually coming in right now, like really, no pun intended, anchored in to what this means to me, what anchoring in the light really, really means to me, and how I've been practicing it, like, and sharing practical ways of doing it versus just some airy fairy idea, oh, anchoring in the light, la la la. Right? Because sometimes like that's what happens. We hear all these words and this jargon from spiritual communities and we're like, what the F does that mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I've brought it up in conversations before and had people ask me that. What do you mean by anchor? What do you mean by anchor in? So, and I think for me, I'm trying to remember, like, do you remember how you even came into an understanding, or when you first had your experience of
Anchoring in,
or learning that or experiencing that?
Okay, that's a really good question.
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking.
I'm gonna say I knew it as a different word. And when I started to practice it, I started to define it for myself, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah. Like I've always known people to say, like, I've always heard that term in the spiritual community. I don't know that I've ever associated that with the things that I was doing. And then, I don't know, it might have been another soul conversation we had a year ago, 6 months ago, and the word popped up and I'm like, oh, okay, anchoring in, that makes a lot of sense now that I've understand it. So I don't know if there's any particular time. I forget, I guess.
Yeah. No, I think about it too, and I'm thinking, how did I even, I feel like it's just something that you absorb information and knowledge and wisdoms and content, and then you kind of just swirl everything together in a way that resonates most with you, and then here we are. I don't know, but
I love that. I love how you just expressed that you just swirl it together and you kind of resonates with you. Yeah, that's exactly what that's honestly, that all the jargon that we use in our conversations, all the jargon that we hear when we're following spiritual people and this, anyone on the spiritual path, there are keywords and buzzwords. I'm going to call it buzzwords that people talk about. I mean, there's quantum leaping, there's manifestation, there's anchoring in, there's polarity. I mean, there's just so much jargon around that. But I really believe in what you said. Like, you take everything in, you kind of bring it into your mind and kind of try to understand it for yourself, but really whatever resonates with you is what's going to express out of you, because otherwise it's not your truth, right? So however you experience it is your truth, and however I experience it is my truth. There might be similarities, but how we experience it is going to be fairly different, because we just perceive things differently.
Yeah, absolutely. This is going to be fun, because now as I'm pondering that, I'm just starting to really reflect on my whole, I don't know, for some reason, I just started to reflect on my whole spiritual experience, and just thinking about how everything, I've never felt drawn to these big buzzwords, manifestation, quantum leaping, even like light work and things
I'm
like
a sucker
that.
for it.
Yeah, I'm just like, my experience is my experience. I can express something to someone and they'll be like, oh, that's quantum leaping. Okay. But for me, I experience it how I experience it. So we don't need to
actually that actually makes sense, because we had a conversation was it yesterday, and you were like, yeah, I've been reading an article about the number 3. I go, oh, the power of the Holy Trinity. And you were like, yeah, I guess. And it's funny because, like, I guess I'm into buzzwords. I mean, literally my entire career has been in marketing, so buzzwords are a big thing for us. So that's how my brain associates things. And then eventually, like, a buzzword will be like that carrot dangling, or like that nice shiny gold thing that I'm like, oh, what's that? I'll go into it. But then, to your point, in the journey, you start to unravel and understand it for yourself and define it for yourself.
Right. Yes.
So, right. Yeah. I love that. So anchoring in. So tell me about your experience of it, and like sort of what you define it as. Do you actually remember? You don't remember where you first heard it, did you?
No, I think for me, I don't even know if I use the word anchor very much. Sometimes, anchoring into the light, anchoring into my truth, but really it's just the same for me as like tapping into something. I think we use the word anchor because it's more telling, you can visualize an anchor.
Yeah.
An anchor is something that really like holds into something, really grounds into something. So I definitely like the word and the use of it. But for me, the journey of recognizing light and like identifying darkness, I mean, I feel like that's something that I'm still evolving around. Like I'm still learning how to like identify these things, and what resonates is light, and what resonates is darkness. But basically my understanding, as I go into my meditation and I have these very divine connective experiences. I'm just making a bunch of words today.
It's okay.
I like to think of it as like, we have this connection with these high vibrational energies, right? So I like to think of myself, my energetic being, my energetic body, kind of tapping into these subtle vibrations, right? And then like pulling from that higher energetic realm. So I go into my meditation and I feel these subtle vibrations. I tap into this higher energetic realm, where then I'm able to receive and kind of beam that onto the earth.
Okay.
Because I think what we want to see is like the restoration of neutrality and balance, right? Like that's kind of the goal, to restore neutrality and balance on the earth plane. So I think for me, for a long time, I felt like, wow, that's so big, right? to be able to tap into these vibrations from a higher realm, take that and send that on the earth plane, and then we're supposed to restore balance and make some kind of huge impact and difference.
Yeah.
But as I began to practice anchoring into the light, by doing meditation and prayer and realizing how, when I'm in my meditation, the veil between realms feels so thin sometimes. How just such a simple act can bring me in such close communion with source, right? All of a sudden, something that feels very big feels very small, and something that feels so huge, my ability to send light onto the earth plane feels very potent and powerful. And then I just imagine if each person on this planet begins to learn how to have communion with source and tap into those high energetic vibrations and go through that same process, how we really can light up the grid, right?
Yeah.
So am I making sense?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's
Yes,
really
yeah.
what it is for me. It's just constantly going into this practice of connecting with source and realizing that, this isn't a really big act. It's very simple, it's very small. It's just a small moment of surrender and just receiving those subtle vibrations of love and light and recognizing, identifying where there is darkness on our earth plane and just simply turning that light towards that darkness and trusting, trusting what is coming through me and trusting that through my energetic being that I am so powerful to send this out and make, a difference because it's not me, we're vessels, right? And yeah, it's kind of fun actually. I grew up playing this game, Space Invaders, and I imagine my hands are like the pew 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 pew, and I see the darkness, the dark areas on our planet, and I just pull that light, and I'm like pew 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 pew.
I love that. I love that.
So
I think that's a really, really beautiful way of anchoring the light. And you said something earlier. You said when you are connected to source, there's sort of that space that you're in. And it's almost like that space is that space of oneness. So yes, I agree with that anchoring the light is the practice that we are able to cultivate for ourselves to be able to come into alignment. And it's almost like we're tapping into something higher, but we're also, again, bringing that into our physical body. Because I know there's a lot of meditations where everyone just kind of wants to be in that higher realms. But to your point, in order for us to go pew, 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 pew into the earth, we have to actually, you said we're a vessel. We actually have to use our physical body to bring in that higher vibrational energy and bring it into and anchoring it into our own physical body. So we actually radiate it out, because that's how we're able to share that to whoever we want to share it with. It's interesting. I was talking to one of my mentors and I was like, yeah, I was meditating the other day and I really just felt so much love come into my body. And I didn't even want to breathe because it just felt really good. It's almost like a nice, just like butterflies, it just the energetic feeling in your body of just butterflies where you don't even feel your body. You don't feel the heaviness of your body. You just feel that lightness. And all I felt in my heart space was love. And I was intentionally sending that out. And she goes, when you get to that space, you don't even need to send that out because it automatically just radiates out of you. And I'm like, because that's how powerful it is. So imagine that with the intention becomes even more powerful. So it's interesting that you do that. The pew, pew, pew. What I do with anchoring. So one of my definitions as well is the same definition as yours, which is anchoring in the light, energetic light from source through meditation, through my body, and allowing myself to be a channel and sending it out, I go to the river. I offer flowers to the river. And what I do is I close my eyes and I imagine, the flower of life, the sacred geometry. So I imagine that covering the water, and I imagining connecting my heart space to that. And that's how I send the love, through the petals of the flower of life as it ripples into the water. So I love the medicine of water. So I think that sort of amplifies that. So yeah, so it's a very, very similar definition where we allow ourselves to be channel and surrender to that.
I love that. And I love that you mentioned intention, and I think that's something that's so important. I always make everything, pew, 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 but my pew, pew, pews are, the intention, because the intention is so powerful. And, just even just practicing with intention, you just see how powerful it is. Make an intention before you go to bed and watch what happens the next day. It's insane how heard we are by the spirit realm. But yeah, I feel that anchoring in should definitely be met with intention.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think there's another piece that I want to bring up as far as anchoring in. It's also, so it's not just, so I don't like, when I practice anchoring in, it's not just through meditation, because we're not always meditating, right? So how do we do that in our everyday lives? So for me, anchoring in the light is really expressing myself in the most loving way I can towards people, places, things in my everyday life. Does that make sense? So it's almost like intentional practice of meditation and anchoring the light through meditation, but there's also the practice of expressing myself as the light in how I speak to people and how I show up in people's lives, and how I guess share who I am and who I would like to think I am into the people that I meet. Let me preface this by saying that I do work in corporate America, so it is a little harder. I'm not like, even with the knowledge and the wisdom and the practices that we do to anchor in the light, like whoever out there is working like a regular corporate 9-to-5 job and is in, trying to do what they can on the spiritual journey to heal and anchor in that light in office spaces that are very toxic. Like, I mean, I understand, but we get to sort of be that light in those spaces of darkness in our everyday lives. Do I still get triggered? Hell yeah. People trigger the F out of me sometimes, but I have the tools to process through that trigger and understand that it's not them, it's me. And I get an opportunity to anchor in even more light by releasing all of those triggers and karmic patterns that don't serve me, heal those, and then anchor in more light. So the more we heal, the more we are able to anchor in more light for ourselves. So that's sort of another way that I've experienced or defined anchoring in the light. And light to me is just love, joy, happiness, everything that is of God.
I love, 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 love that you brought that up. I do. I was
Because
thinking
people do you too?
Yeah, I mean, I just love that you brought up the everyday aspect of it, that it's not just about practice or ritual, it's about how you show up. Like one of my ways that I anchor in the light is chanting. And one of my favorite things that I like to chant is, I am a being of light. I am a being that comes from the light. I share my light with the world. Because first I have to remember that I am a being of light, and I think that's the first part of it. A lot of people, like when I dived into spirituality, I didn't recognize that I came from the light. I was very interested because I had this huge awakening experience, and all of a sudden, I was just like in this world that I didn't recognize with massive curiosity. But I didn't know that I was a being of light. I didn't know that I was someone that came from the light. And I didn't know that it was my purpose to share my light with the world. I just was dropped off into this new reality and like what's going on. So I think first it's just so important to recognize that we do come from the light, and once we recognize that within ourselves, then it becomes a little bit easier to go seek that connection with that source of light, right?
Because so when you say, sorry to interrupt, when you say you come from the light, do you mean like we are made of, like we are made by God, of God, and we are God? Is that what you mean?
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah. Yes, I feel you. I understand.
Yeah. So I think it's important to recognize that first. And like for me to send light out, to be light in the world, I have to experience light. And I think that's why like the meditation, the acts of meditation and the acts of breath work and, whatever brings you there is so important before going out into the world, because that's where I get to experience that light. Like you said, where you were in your meditation or, your practice, and you felt just your heart space, like all of that love and light and that lightness. I really had to have those experiences to truly understand how to go and show up in the world. Because before I was just navigating from a place of my idea of light. And when I actually got to experience light, I'm like, wow, my idea of light was basically just based off of my experiences, which really wasn't the truth, that was inside of me, that came from source. It was just my ideas out of like my accumulated experiences. We all want to think, or we know that light is good, but when you truly like go into communion with the light, with that like higher vibrational energetic realm, it's such a different experience that I've never experienced outside of that. You know what I mean? So first, I feel like I really needed to recognize light to go and show up as light, because it's hard. Like I feel like my default emotion is anger. It's that's my very human form of expression. When I get frustrated or I'm met with challenge or adversity, I immediately go to anger.
Yeah.
And for me, that was something very difficult to overcome. It's something I'm still trying to overcome. And I feel like my path has been filled with a lot of challenges that are trying to teach me peace and patience and grounding. And now I have that understanding. I know that it's part of my life path to learn how to soften this anger that is just, I'm a fire sign. And so it's important for me to go to the light a lot.
You're like, not light, you're like fire. Wait, hold on, time out, that's not me.
Yeah, I didn't come with a fire extinguisher. So for some people, that's not their default, but for me it is. So it's important for me to go visit. I have to visit the light a lot to go show up as light. But yeah, how we show up in the world, going back to your point, is so important, because that's why we do the work, to be examples of light, to shine on dark situations and the darkness that is inside of other people. So I love that you brought that up, and I said my piece.
Pew, pew, you're like fire. But it's really important for us to understand too that when people trigger us and our default is either anger or frustration or whatever it may be, we're humans. It is okay to have those emotions, even if you're on this healing journey, especially when you're on this healing journey or in this spiritual journey, because we get to become more aware of our triggers and our patterns so that we can heal it, so that we can alchemize it, transmute it, meaning transform that anger into softness, into softening into the love, into softening into the peace, and into softening into harmony, whatever it may be. But we're human. We're gonna get triggered. There are days I can't anchor the light in the spaces that I'm in, because honestly, I have to go through a process. I have to kind of, when, I can't always, just to be clear, I can't always anchor in the lights, because sometimes the darkness that comes in, or the darkness that we experience, is something that we haven't actually processed through or healed. So for me, when I'm in spaces where, let's talk about the darkness a little bit, when there is a little bit of darkness, there is that anger, frustration, and like there's something just triggers the F out of you. Actually, that happened to me last week at work. Something triggered the F out of me. And I was just like, I can't even send you, this person, any kind of light or love. And then I processed through it over the weekend. And I realized that I felt, it wasn't abandonment that I felt. It was feeling not heard and not seen by this person, and feeling like this person did wrong to me. And when I process it even more, I was like, you know what? This person was just doing their job. They're going through some things. Like, I can't even be mad at that. So as I was processing through it, so the process actually, so this is another way this segues into the other way I anchor in sort of what that light is. It's basically the space that I use in between knowing something and embodying something. So it's the practices in between that allow me to embody this sort of higher version of me that can anchor in the light and that can share out the love and the light. So it's that process of shadow work. And we talk about that. Pretty sure it was like episode 3. Look at that. Actually, I want to plug in, you were talking about spiritual awakening earlier. Season 1, episode 1, watch that. That's about spiritual awakening. So you can kind of keep up with some of the things that we talk about. But anyway, so, part of the anchoring in is actually the process in between knowing to embodiment. And knowing that I'm triggered by something, not doing anything about it. I'm not going to embody the light. But the steps that I take in between that to be able to heal that, to be able to acknowledge it, process through it, then I can anchor in that light. The interesting part is, as I've gone through this process for however many years, it actually doesn't take me that long, as long as it used to. So it used to be something would trigger me. It would take weeks, maybe even months, maybe even years to get to the place of, okay, I feel at peace now. I can send you love. Now it actually doesn't take me that long. I'll get triggered, become aware of the trigger, start to do shadow work around the trigger. And then I can come into acceptance of it much faster than I used to. And then that's when I'm able to embody the forgiveness that I need, or the acceptance that I need, so that I can send whoever triggered me light, because I understand why you triggered me, because it was all about me and my perception of what happened versus what really happened. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I love that. It's so true. Oh my gosh, just the process. I feel like I can process things. Not that it's my goal to process things very quickly, but
No.
I'm able to process things much quicker because I choose to.
Yeah.
I think, in the past, there's no choice. You're not, I wasn't, at least, like looking to process something. I was just going through the motions the best I knew how. But now I know that this is something that I can work through, and I want to, so that I can get back to a place of peace and grounding, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because who wants to stay in suffering? Who wants to stay in anger and annoyance and frustration? I will say, the old me loved it. Right? Because it was like, woe is me. Everyone is against me. I'm a victim. You know
I'm
what
a
I mean?
victim.
I mean, there is such a thing as being a victim, but there's also a thing about being having victim mentality. And like, yeah, we're so used to that, right? Like, and I do like that you said that we're not trying to process it as fast as we can, because we shouldn't. But there may be things that you're able to process through faster. There may be things that will take time, and allow yourself. And that's where intuition comes in. That's where soul connection comes in, where you're like, okay, what do I need to do for this now? What's my next step?
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, no one wants to live in frustration. We always want to anchor in the light, because now that we know what it feels like, hell,
And I think that's why, we talked very, very early on. This might have been in season 1, episode 1, when we were talking about awakening, how once you have this awakening experience, it seems like you cannot escape it. This is your life now.
Yeah.
And
you can go back to sleep,
myself,
right?
why, even if I try, trust me, I've tried. I'm like, I don't want this life. I can't get out. Now I want to be here. I love everything that comes with it. But there was a time where I just thought, how do I get the F out of here? It's too much. I feel too much. I'm so overly sensitive now. I cry like 24/7. I didn't ask for this.
It was this time last year, by the way.
Was it?
Yeah, I remember you were like, I'm done. I remember. I'm so happy you got that. I'm so happy you like anchored in more light.
Yeah, me too. But it's exactly like what you said, once you see it, once you experience it truly, then you don't want anything different, because there's nothing better than that. There really isn't.
No, there's nothing better than feeling that, like that love, that expansion of in your body. Like, that's the thing. Embodiment is so important in this practice, in this process, because to feel it in your body, you're just going to want to feel it. Dr. Joe talks about it, where he talks about like heart mind coherence. He talks about like the way he does his meditation. He's like, when you start having these mystical experiences, you're just going to want to continue having those mystical experiences. And the mystical experiences that he talks about is actually through the process of the meditation that he walks you through. And the minute that you could feel that, you're going to want to walk through your day and your life and this journey, always tapping into that. Again, as I mentioned, it is difficult to do 24/7, but again, you said it earlier, you went like this. You were like, you just have to face, like, you kind of have to just face the direction of where you want to share the love. You just got to and you just have to pivot to the direction where love is, because and then Steve Harvey, I was going to say, Steve Harvey said something funny. He said, when you're going through hell, why keep going? Why do you want to stay there? Why would you want to stay there? Why would you want to stay in hell? I was like, yeah, that's so true. If you're in suffering because someone traumatized you or someone, triggered you, why do you want to stay there? Why do you want to stay simmering at them, being pissed off? I mean, you can be pissed off because we're human. Like, yeah, be pissed for a little bit, for like a hot second. Right? I give myself that permission sometimes.
That's why we have to heal our wounds. Because if we don't, that hell can feel really good. It's like you said, many of us are very familiar with being in victimhood or victim mentality. There's a reward to it. We go through something awful, and then we have people who give us like attention that we desire, and
I was about to say attention.
And that's just as addicting.
Yeah, it's trauma bonding. You don't want a relationship with someone based off of trauma bonding. I know that all too well, and it doesn't end well. It does not.
Never. And any form of connection or relationship, platonic, whatever,
anything,
it never goes wrong.
Yeah.
So, and I also think, while I feel the hardest part about the journey of learning the anchor and the light is like recognizing, staying aligned with the big picture. for
Okay.
humanity. 'Cause I feel like there's a lot of
Okay.
stuff that happens on the surface
Yeah.
that is
Yeah.
very triggering, and we can
Thanks.
all too quickly forget our purpose, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
So I think it's important to take time with everything, you know, and I think that's why it's important to learn how to be responsive and not so reactive,
Yeah.
because we live in a world that constantly tries to get a reaction from
Yeah.
us, you know,
Yeah.
forcing us to choose sides. And, you know, I don't feel that there's any sides when it comes to the light. You know, we use the word oneness for a reason. And I think it's important to realize and recognize when we feel like we're choosing a side, because then we're not going the right direction, you know?
When you say
Um,
choosing, do you mean dark light side?
I just mean sides in general. You know, I feel like we're constantly being pushed to choose sides in
Yeah.
everything, you know, with conflict in the world, with
Oh, okay. I see. I got you. I'm like, okay.
yeah,
You
not so
like
much, not
political sides, or political sides, or where you stand with whatever is going on out there.
friendships, you know,
Not gonna say the
whatever.
word. Yeah, yeah.
And
Yeah.
I feel like that's something that I'm constantly asking myself. You know, sometimes you feel a lot of pressure to choose sides, but I have to constantly remind myself that, you know, if I'm going to choose a side, I'm on the side. And I wrote something kind of like this morning, like I'm on the side of love, I'm on the side of oneness, I'm on the side of humanity.
Yeah.
And if I'm feeling like I have to choose anything but, well, that's not a side I want to be on, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And uh, and again, that just goes with the recognition of that which is light, love, and good. Because otherwise it's very easy to get caught up in things on the
Yeah.
surface. And I think that's why everything that we do within ourselves, it really does reflect back out into the world, you know? It's like I go deep within myself so that I can like understand the depth of someone else, you know?
Yeah.
If you don't do that, you'll always stay on the surface with other people. I go and try to find the light with them so that I can recognize the light outside, you know? So I think these mirroring, this is another buzzword, mirroring exercises. I've never probably tried them the way that they define it for us, but I do think mirroring exercises are important to help us to recognize, you know, the things that happen within us, like how we experience it out into the world. I think that it's very helpful. Do you
When
know?
you say mirroring exercise, what do you mean?
Well, I don't know how one would define a mirroring exercise, but how I'm thinking of it right now is like we mirror like a lot of the things that we experience within ourselves, like we experience outside of ourselves, right? Does that make sense so far?
Yeah. So the chaos inside of us is the chaos outside of us. The peace inside of us is the peace outside of us. Yeah. Like,
Exactly.
okay. I understand.
So
Yeah.
I feel that that's so,
That is true.
you know, for me, when I think about how I choose to operate
Yeah.
in the world, I really have, that's why the time with me, with my highest self, with source is so important, because that's
Yeah.
how I recognize like how to handle things in the
Yeah.
outside world.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
No, it does make sense because, like, again, on the practices that we do on our on this healing journey that we're on, the spiritual journey, actually allows us to understand ourselves fully, inside, internal, understand how we feel, understand how we are sort of showing up in the world. And so if we're showing up in the world in an angry way, we get to look back inside of us to say, okay, why am I so angry? And then we heal that, or we acknowledge it, we understand why we're so angry about certain things, and then we get to heal that. And then when we show up the next day, it's like, okay, I'm not as triggered, I'm not as angry. It's the process. And it's interesting when you were talking just now about like just the process and coming back inward, and like in the healing journey you go inside, um, and like kind of mirroring, kind of like, okay, well, what am I seeing outside? So if I'm seeing chaos outside, why, I have to look inside to see why there's chaos, because that's really me mirroring that out. I remember I've been on this spiritual journey. I had my first spiritual awakening 2009, right? And throughout that process, I never really understood the healing part. I did a lot of spiritual bypassing. It was really a lot of love and light spirituality. And it was just, someone said the other day, are you love and light Linda? I was like, oh my God, I was so love and light Linda.
I haven't heard that.
Oh, I heard it the other day. I was Jake Woodward who said it. I was on one of his master classes, and I was like, oh, I like that, love and light Linda. I like that. That was me. Because I didn't go through the process of healing my inner wounds. And so I would look in my outside world and be like, why is there still chaos? Why am I still experiencing heartache? Why am I still experiencing these, like, why am I being so triggered all the time? And then I went through the dark night of the soul, which is episode 3 or episode 4, by the way, season 1. We talked about the dark night. We're going to be talking about the dark night of the soul a lot during these conversations, because it's a really important part of the process. Went through that, and that's when I started to really go inward, because my outside life was chaos. I was in a really, really sad marriage. It was chaos every single day of my life, and I barely held it together. On the outs, like on the physical outside, when people would see me, I was like love and light Linda, but it wasn't anchored in love and light. It was outside love and light. Inside, it was so filled with angst and anger and frustration that I was in this marriage that was just like not aligned with my soul, and I was just having such a rough time. And then I went through the dark night. I actually ended up separating, getting a divorce. And then I said to myself, okay, how are we showing up in this world going forward? I'm like, I can't continue to be angry. I can't continue to be sad. I can't continue to be miserable. I can't continue to be love and light Linda, and then on the inside, like, be so freaking heartbroken and so just not happy with life, like miserable. And when I asked that question, things started to come into my purview of what's my consciousness. I mean, of okay, what does it mean to really truly heal? And then I started to go inside. I started to layer by layer look at it. Anger, resentment, oh, abandonment, oh, wait, neglect. And I started to look at every part of me that was quote unquote broken and wasn't broken. Every part of me that was dark, quote unquote, that I just shoved because I didn't know how to deal with it. I didn't want to feel those emotions. I just love and light. And then there was just no way around it, because I finally came to an awareness of, oh, all of these darkness within me needed to heal, so that when the darkness in the world started to happen, I wouldn't see it as darkness, I would see it as light.
Well, I feel like you just brought the whole show home. You just wrapped it all up. That's the end of the show, folks. I mean, it exactly. You can't, and I think that's the biggest lesson of all time. It does not matter how you walk on the outside.
Yeah.
You can put on whatever face you decide to any
put
day.
On a smile every single day. Yeah.
But if that doesn't reflect like what's actually going on the inside, that's what your reality outside of you is going to look like. I mean, that was it. Like, I don't even know what else to talk about today.
Yeah. I guess, yeah, I mean, you're gonna give me like, wait, where's my microphone? So guys, that is the end of episode 3. Soul Conversations with Jenna and Patty. No, but I think all these points that we brought to this conversation, I think it's just they're the same, but they're all, I said it differently, you said it differently, but they're all the same. It comes down to the practices that we do. It comes down to being the light, embodying that light. And in order to embody it, a microphone. It's not, you need a microscope, not a microphone, a microscope inside. Yeah. It's just what it is. So, I mean, do you have any last parting words?
No.
Before we wrap?
That was it.
Drop the mic. I love it. Okay. Well, I hope that you guys learned something about anchoring in the light. I hope that something that we said today kind of, if it triggered you, that's fine. Go inward and DM me, DM Jenna. Let us know why you were triggered. But yeah, I mean, hopefully this conversation what's the word I'm looking for? Shined a light, shown a light, or planted a seed, or helped in any way to really understand what it means to be the light in these times of darkness. And we have a very, very different perspective of what's happening with humanity right now, and I'm very hopeful. I mean, I know you are.
Very, very hopeful.
Yeah. And we're just very, very hopeful. And that's why we continue to do the work that we do. And we continue to have these conversations, because we really think it's important for the awakening to happen and for everyone to start to awaken to the truth of who they are. You're light, you are light, you are God, you are love, you are literally magic and stardust. Pew, pew.
Well, we thank you all for joining us on another soul conversation. We really appreciate your support, your like, comments, and shares. Do not be a stranger.
Please subscribe and watch the other episodes.
Yes, and we look forward to having you join us on our next episode.
Have a good night. Have a good morning. Have a good afternoon, wherever you are.
Yes.
We love you.
We love you.
And gratitude.
Hold on.